Yo, what up, Dorky here? It's been a while since last video, but wanted to make this video to talk about what tanks are looking like for next season. I hope to use this as a way to give feedback to Blizzard on the state of tanking and for you guys to understand the current situation. Tank for the most part feels good. Lots of nerfed tank busters like Big Mama, Captain Dallycry, Soliman, and various other mobs getting nerfed, making it a lot more reasonable for some of the weaker tanks. Problem is, some tanks right now are awful, and the threat issue is still a major problem for a lot of tanks on pull. We've had a whole season of EDH and got to see just how bad Eldrazi Reaver played for threat. Reason threat is an issue is because a lot of tank damage nowadays doesn't actually come from the abilities we've used for decades. So let's take a look at some of these logs to show some examples of what exactly I mean. These 4 logs I have here are from Dragonflight Season 4, which is not even long ago, and if we go back even further into like BFA, it gets way more exaggerated. So, Brewmaster damage breakdown, we've got Breath of Fire actually doing damage, Charred Dreams, which is a tier set, Sprinting Crane Kick doing a decent amount of damage, and Rushing Jadewind. These are like your main abilities you would use to pull mobs. Breath of Fire, Keg Smash, some Blackout Kicks, Rushing Jadewind, and Spinning Crane Kick. Alright, looks good, right? Here's Prow Warrior. Thunderclap does a good chunk of your damage, and it's what you mostly use to pick up mobs. Then we have Prop Paladin here. I mean, you kind of use all your abilities to pick up mobs as a Prop Paladin. Avenger Shield, Shield Righteous, Consecrate, Judgment on some mobs. And then we have Demon Hunter, where Spirit Bomb is actually doing a sizable amount of our damage. And even Immortal is doing 7.4%. Now, let's take a look at what the classes are looking like. Yoda DH in a 17 Eco Dome. Almost 30% of your damage comes from Fury of Eldrazi, which you're not going to use to pick up mobs. Soul Cleave does nothing. Sigil of Flame, you only have so many Sigil of Flames. You ideally want to use them when they're gathered, or you might use like one of them on pull. Reaver's Glaive, which you need to farm for a proc. So yeah, Immor is like doing no damage. There's no Spirit Bomb. It's extremely hard for Demon Hunter to actually pull mobs and get aggro on them until they're actually grouped. Then let's take a look at Sense here. Thunderclap doing a piss 3% damage compared to what we had back here. Now obviously, if he was playing Mountain Thane, it would actually be much better, but with the current meta hero talent, Colossus, it is way harder to pick up threat on pull. And then we look at Corn Muffin here playing Paladin. I mean, look at this. Hammer and Anvil is doing 30% of their damage. Avenger Shield does way less. Shield Righteous, Consecrate is like nothing. A lot of your weapon also comes from your weapons. Then over here, it's me, Can't Believe. Like, this is the exaggerated one. Let's compare this for a second. Breath of Fire, Keg Smash, Exploding Keg, Spinning Crane Kick, Rushing Jadewind. And if you look over here, I don't even know if I pressed. Oh, Spinning Crane Kick, it did less than 1% of my damage. This button is so worthless nowadays. Tiger Palm, a single target ability, is doing a lot of my damage. Flurry Strikes, you have to proc it, you have to build a proc. Keg Smash still does a decent amount of damage, but aside from Keg Smash, Rushing Jadewind is pretty piss damage. Breath of Fire does nothing. Spring Crane Kick is absolutely useless. So it just becomes so much harder to get aggro on these classes. Nowadays, if you want to get aggro, you have to, Demon Hunter for example, you have to cast your hunt. After you finish casting your hunt, you have to Reaver's Glaive, and then you have to Fracture, and finally you have to use Soul Cleave to proc your Fury of the Eldrazi. So you have to do all those globals just to do one big hit, and that's after the mobs have been grouped, and that's not accounting for all the other globals you have to press to survive, or maybe you have to use a CC like Chaos Nova, Sigil of Chains. This is the real problem with threat at the moment. So it doesn't matter if Blizzard decides to buff threat by another 50% or so. It's not going to make a whole lot of difference unless they address the actual issue of tanks. We'll talk about the elephants in the room first. Prow Warrior. This class is very problematic at the moment. Right now, the way Warrior functions is 90% of the time, the class is unkillable and the most OP thing in the game. However, for that remaining 10% of the time, Warrior gets completely destroyed. So an example is First Boss of Priory does an insane amount of damage to Warrior, and their new self-healing from Fueled by Violence isn't doing enough to keep him alive. Because of how good the new tier set is in conjunction with the new talent tree, we're likely going to see Prow Warrior nerfs over the next few weeks. And when that happens, this class is so done for. Basically, what happened this patch is they made bleeds do a ton of damage in Colossus, and the talent Fueled by Violence got buffed, which heals based off of your bleed deep wounds. This made Prow Warrior a class that already took no damage to blockable attacks get an insane amount of self-healing depending on how many mobs you fight. This class is just so ridiculously binary at the moment, it feels impossible to balance. Removing spell block was good for addressing the issue, but the issue got worse in other areas. Your survivability now depends on two major factors. One is how many mobs you're fighting, and two is the type of damage you're receiving. The more mobs you're fighting, the tankier you are by a significant amount, and if you're just fighting one mob, your healing goes down by an insane amount. And the type of damage you're receiving, well, I mean, warriors have been known to suck really bad with bleed damage, magic damage, and magic dots. But now it's gotten so much worse because no more spell block, which again, I think it's good for the game. I don't think spell block was healthy to have. But yeah, I mean, this class needs some major changes before the patch goes live. Brewmaster received the next most changes and has actually been the tank I've played the most on PTR. It's been super fun to play and it feels a lot more like what I've envisioned Brew to be. Smoother damage intake, but still requiring a ton of healing to deal with the current stagger. The new talent, New Zal's Resolve, is bugged at the moment, even though Blizzard said it was fixed. This on top of a new talent that increases stagger by up to an additional 20%, and Celestial Infusion helps a lot with smoothing out damage intake. The tier set for Shadowpan is also nuts, but the way Shadowpan plays right now is extremely RNG and can be frustrating. As I've shown in the aggro discussion, it can be very annoying trying to get aggro on Brew when most of your abilities don't actually do damage. Right now, Brew has the craziest AoE burst potential in the game, and I've had moments where I'm actually top AoE damage. I'm feeling quite optimistic about Brew, but it'll likely be in a situation similar to Season 2. You can make Brew work in physical god comps, and I actually think this is low-key better for most players than the standard VDH meta comp. I've watched Monk C's group climb to top World 5 with keys that match the highest level keys in the world by pulling smaller and not requiring nearly as much comms or weak auras and all that shenanigans. We can tune into his stream and see this guy just typing to his party chat, doing the highest keys with largely default UI and just smaller capped AoE pulls. However, you can't really make Monk work in the quote-unquote standard meta comps that people play. Like if you're trying to pair Monk with a Disc Priest, that's kind of a recipe for disaster, or if you're having Monk play with classes like Boomkin, Shadow Priest, Arcane Mage, it just doesn't work nearly as well. Not only is the raid buff not as good, but you also don't have the same amount of control that a VDH does to enable those classes. Also, a lot of those classes just rely on much larger pulls to perform, and if you're just trying to play something like a Boomkin while doing smaller pulls, it's not going to be a very good situation. VDH, the premier tank for multiple seasons now, is likely just going to be as dominant as before with the way the game is going. This class just synergizes the best with the usual suspects of OP classes like Boomkin, Mage, or Shadow Priest, or just Priest in general actually. The class also just does really well in almost all types of situations. It's good at low target count, high target count, physical damage, bleed, magical. It kind of does it all with the way it's currently designed, by just having permanent spikes, high base damage mitigation to all types of damage, and short cooldowns that cover almost any tank buster in the game. The control is obviously the most powerful of all tanks too, aside from maybe Prop Paladin. And more importantly, the way DHs do damage at the moment is insane for priority damage. The new tier set amplifies Fury of the Eldraki even further, making Wounded Quarry, their funnel talent, do an insane amount of extra power damage. I've had moments where I actually beat the non-arcane mage in main target damage, and no other tank can actually do that. Despite all this, I really hope the solution Blizzard has isn't just nerfing VDH. The game is in a state where tanking feels really bad as a non-VDH, and if all they did was nerf VDH, we're gonna feel terrible. Aside from Brewmaster and Pro Warrior, it'll be hard for other tanks to stand on their own, and like I've mentioned, I think Pro Warrior is gonna get deleted from the game by Blizzard, and Brewmaster can only play in specific comps. Also, I've just been having a lot of fun playing VDH, so even if we get a new season of VDH, I'll probably still have fun tanking on that, but I do want other tanks to be just as fun as VDH, and I've been having a lot of fun playing something like Brewmaster at the moment on PTR. For the next few tanks, I'm not going to go too deep into them, but Blizzard really needs to take a hard look at them. Bear feels like it's been the same since the start of the expansion. It plays like crap with Luzen's Chosen, where all you do is Thrash, Mangle, and Ironfur. Losing Raze and Maul from Dragonflight Season 2 was so sad to see. This was by far the most fun Bear has ever been, and it's devolved back to this spam fest. The class also just feels very mediocre. It does quite well surviving most keys, but the damage is just awful. Druid of the Claw has not been a real hero talent, and I'm sad about this too because of how excited I was to play this talent since the start of the expansion. Despite the amount of buffs they've given to Druid of the Claw, it's just not good enough for M+. The survivability is complete trash compared to Luzen's Chosen, and it doesn't even do good damage. What I would like to see return for Bear is some of their group healing. I remember back in Season 2 of Dragonflight when you were able to heal the party with After Wildfire and just popping some Dream of Cenarius regrowths onto one of your low HP players and just healing for an insane amount. But yeah, I mean, Bear I'm honestly kind of sad with how there has been this expansion. Blood DK, one of my favorite tanks, has been the same stinky class since the start of Dragonflight. The way the class is designed makes it impossible for it to be good in high keys. It has no way of scaling with larger damage intake, and that's what M+ is. Infinitely scaling and customizable pull sizes. The larger you pull, the higher the key you go, the more likely the class is to being one shot. It suffers from a similar issue to Pro Warrior where it's extremely binary, but instead of a 90-10, it's more of a 50-50. Half the time, you're unkillable and it feels insanely good, but the other half feels like there's almost no counterplay and you kind of just get destroyed. And anyone who's been playing Blood DK for the past few seasons know exactly what I'm talking about. It's also one of the few tanks that received nerfs coming from the previous season, and that's kind of crazy to think about. Not having a raid buff, losing Abomination Limb, getting AMZ nerfed, and some of the changes to Sand Lane and Deathbringer functionalities makes the class so much worse for M+. Bringing a Blood DK at the moment is straight up a downgrade from other tanks, and it's insane that the class still brings nothing at all to the group. Prop Paladin is a bit of a weird one at the moment. I've always felt like Prop Paladin was really well designed and can perform well, but the tuning has just been off on this spec for a while now. They've received some heavy-handed nerfs back in the start of Season 2, and they've never recovered since. Right now, Prop Paladins do no single target damage because of how weird their tier set is, and the class just isn't very survivable. We've seen them dominate hard in Season 1 with the reworked talent tree, plus Lightsmith giving them tempered in battle, short bubble, and an insane amount of parry from strength in adversity. But even in that season, Prop Paladin didn't feel particularly tanky. Now, tanks like Pro Warrior and VDH have powercraft past them, and they've fallen far behind. I don't think it's too hard for Prop Paladin to be fixed, since it is in a much better state than some of the other tanks I've mentioned. It's just a matter of number tuning for this class, because it still offers a lot to the table. Having utility like Avenger Shield, Devo Aura, and all the different blessings and some off healing is actually so nice to have. Anyways, that covers my thoughts on the state of tanking. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you can, please share the video so I can gain some traction and maybe Blizzard takes notice. I've been having a lot of fun M+ing this season and on PTR, and if they can just fix some of these issues, it would make tanking a way better experience. Thanks for watching.